KFI AM 640 is later with Mo Kelly. We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. We have a very full show tonight. Of course, we're going to have a Metro update. That's coming next segment, as obviously today was the State of the Agency address. So Metro, you have the State of the Union, you have the State of the State, you have the State of the City. Well, Metro has its State of the Agency address. And a baton was passed today. Mayor Karen Bass, who was also chair of the Metro Board, passed the proverbial baton and gavel to Supervisor Janice Hahn, who will now be chair of the Metro Board. And we have some audio from that, and I definitely have some thoughts about that. And just adjacent to the Metro, and I want to be clear, Metrolink is not Metro, but Metrolink intersects with Metro. If you were to, let's say, take the Metrolink to San Diego, you may take Metro down to Metro Center, and then you pick up Metrolink. So there is some overlap, and there's some negative overlap. You might have heard about the sexual assault on a Metrolink train today. Well, we're going to talk about that. And California is not the best place for summer road trips. I knew that, but you might be curious to find out why that is. Let me first say hello to Elmer, who is running the board today. He was sitting in the number 2 chair last night. Now he's in the chair. You ready to guide the ship, Elmer, tonight?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Keep your eyes on the road.
I will.
Don't talk to me. Watch where we're going. We don't want to crash here, okay? And Mark Ronner, how are you, brother?
I'm grateful for the air conditioning. How are you?
Oh, it feels wonderful here in the studio. It feels wonderful. And it's weird, and you may not know if you're not familiar with how radio works. They may not air condition the whole building, but they'll always have air conditioning in the studio to keep the equipment cool. They care more about the equipment than they do the people.
Does that surprise you? I might sleep in the news booth tonight. I might just stay here.
No. It doesn't surprise me, but if you don't know how radio works, at least behind the scenes, a person might be curious to know. So when in doubt, just sleep in the studio. If you don't have air conditioning at home and you work in radio, just come to the studio. You know they will make sure that the equipment does not overheat.
It's very tempting.
Oh, wait. Well, you haven't slept in a studio yet? I'm being serious.
I've napped in the studio.
Okay. Well, I would always say, and I continue to say, you have not worked in radio until you've been fired. It's number one. And number two, you've either worked overnights or had to sleep in your office or sleep at the station overnight.
I've worked many overnights.
And with that in mind, Tuala Sharp, producer of the show, I know that not only has he been fired from radio, he's done overnights and he slept at the station. Tell me I'm wrong.
No, all of that. All of that.
He wins.
All of that. I've even slept off hangover at the station. Not this station, a station.
Oh,
Sure,
impressive.
Sure. But see, that's the thing about radio. I always say, you're a special person if you want to be here. I mean, you have to love radio. You have to really want to do it. It's not for everyone, especially in today's media age. People want to be YouTube stars. They want to work on TV. They don't want to actually come up through the ranks and deal with the grind. And it's a grind with radio. When I came along, and this was pre-digital, this is analog, you had to have a degree of proficiency as far as cutting audio and reel-to-reel capacity. You couldn't just, today now you just take a phone call and you digitally record it. You could play it back on air. It's so much simpler now than it was, let's say 15 years ago. It used to be you'd have an actual tape rolling, a physical tape. You would take that call, take the actual tape as best you could, cut it up and edit it, then tape it back together, and then put it on the reel, and then if you were really good, run it in the next segment.
Yes.
Yeah, don't forget carts.
Oh, well, no, well, that was better than reel to reel. The problem with carts was you'd have to run it all the way to the end before it can go back to the beginning. You couldn't rewind them.
Oh, no. And if you had a DJ who got impatient and took the card out before it was done, the next DJ that would put it in, it would start right there. Oh, that used to kill us when that happened.
That's grounds for a vendetta right there. Since you bring it up, Mo, don't you think that people who really need to be in radio, it falls somewhere between a true calling and a sick compulsion?
No, it has to be both. Right. I think you have to have the true calling, and you have to answer that calling and give it its due attention. Because for the most part, most of the things that I did in radio, I did not really either get paid for. I got paid very little for. It's a thankless job. You're working ridiculous hours more times than not. And you're talking about being in the number 2 market, at least here in LA. There's all sorts of competition. No one likes you because they want your job.
But we do have free AC.
Yeah, we do.
We do that.
Yeah.
There is that.
And for like a month out of the year, it's very valuable. Yeah. But outside of that month, not so much. In the winter, it's not as much of a big deal. But yeah, for me, I absolutely love radio. I love everything about it. I love the long form aspect where we can talk about things and tell stories and talk about the issues and hear from you. It's much more intimate than television. It's much a better experience than I believe than YouTube and all these podcasts out there. You have a lot of people who just open up a mic and just start talking. It's like, okay, yeah.
I've been a talk radio fan my whole life, just like you.
I first started listening to talk radio in the early to mid 1970s, and I was listening to KABC, the Ken and Bob Company. If you know Ken Minyard, Bob Arthur. And then you'd have Paul Harvey, the great Paul Harvey,
yes.
who would do his commentaries. And he would always, there were 2 kinds. He would tell a story and you don't know where it's going. And then he'll sum it up with a bow at the end. And then he would close it with, and now you know the rest of the story.
Nobody sounded like him.
Nobody. And I would listen to him, and he would also do these commentaries for KABC. And he would say, I'm Paul Harvey. Good day. And that drew me in to talk radio, to be able to tell a story and have someone who's just maybe casually listening at that moment be completely pulled in. I was a talk radio fan ever since. And then as I got older, I don't know if you know this guy by the name, the late Jim Healy, who was on KMPC 710 back in the day. And he was legendary for using what we call drops, sound effects through all of his bits, and he would talk about sports, he would talk about politics, he would talk about any number of things. But the on-hand production he would do, I took from that and learned from that. There are a lot of people in this radio medium that I learned from. Learn from Howard Stern, learn from Rush Limbaugh. You can take a lot from people in the various forms of which they did talk radio, but at the essence was all about being able to connect with people.
I am a big fan of taking note of people's personal trademarks, like Paul Harvey's "Good day." I mean,
yes,
that imprinted on all of us.
All of us, and no one would ever be able to duplicate it, and that's part of the reason why he was one of a kind. But he influenced thousands and thousands of radio professionals.
And I'm glad you bring up Stern too, because he deserves much more credit.
He does, and you think about. One of the kindest compliments I may get is relative to my interviews. And I tell people, well, you know, I took from Larry King. I took from Inside the Actors Studio.
James
Lipton.
Yes.
And I also took from Howard Stern.
Yeah, Stern gets things out of people that nobody else does. And you can float right past that when he's like throwing baloney at a hooker's ass.
Right.
But he gets things from people that other interviews can't or don't.
And part of it is, and here's the actual trade secret, he develops a rapport with the guest. So the guest becomes more comfortable. And then it turns into just a casual conversation between friends as opposed to a real formulaic and sterile interview of question and answer.
Let me just tell you before we go to break, I saw Howard Stern being interviewed by Tom Snyder, who I also loved, who's gone.
NBC, yeah.
And I think it was on a later show where Snyder was filling in for Bob Costas. Stern nearly brought Snyder to the brink of a nervous breakdown, and I rewatched that on YouTube lately. You can find it. It's very entertaining. Stern is a master of pressing people's buttons.
He is.
And they don't even know that the buttons are being pressed, but you can just see, and the camera is still running, and you can see Snyder tearing off his mic and saying, I don't need to sit here for this crap.
Oh, but also
as the credits roll.
Stern was ahead of the curve as far as the video element to the radio show.
Yes.
He and Don Imus, for that matter. But the video element forever changed the game. When we come back, we have that Metro State of the Agency update.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
Today was the State of the Agency address for Metro. It's probably the first year that I've actually paid attention to it. I had heard of it, but never followed it for obvious reasons. We had no real reason to tune into it. But now Metro is at the center, I would say, it's at the center of what ails Los Angeles County. If you could look at the problems, Metro is a microcosm of it, from the trash, from the homelessness to obviously the crime. If you look at what ails Los Angeles County, look no further than Metro. We've heard of the State of the Union. We've all seen that. We've heard State of the State. We've probably seen that. We know that there's a State of the City, but the State of the Agency is probably something that you and I have not followed closely. But this year, I made it a point to tune in. I wanted to see the messaging. I wanted to see how honest it was going to be. I wanted to see what their proposed timeline of what was going to happen in the next year, 2 years, 3 years. Why? Because we have the World Cup coming in less than 2 years. We have the Olympics coming almost 4 years to the day from now. And we're not ready for either. We're not ready as a city. We know that the Olympics in 2028 is supposed to be car free, where they're trying to encourage anyone and everyone to go to the different Olympic venues using public transportation. Ain't no way in hell, excuse my grammar, are we going to do that if we're worried about a homeless person attacking us or a sexual assault, like we are going to talk about next segment on Metrolink. So let's get to this State of the Agency address. We know the outgoing Metro board chair, LA Mayor Karen Bass, was going to speak, talk about where Metro was going, but also was going to hand off the gavel to LA County Supervisor Janice Hahn. It's just a one-year thing. It rotates each year. And Supervisor Hahn is the next Metro board chair. But here's a little bit of what Mayor Bass had to say.
Now, it's going to take several years for the new safety department to be established, but it will meet the unique needs of the sprawling metro system across each of the cities and unincorporated areas of LA County. It will do this with specially trained law enforcement officers to address crime and an increased number of social workers, ambassadors, and other specialists to address the crises of homelessness and addiction that play out on our system.
Okay, good news and bad news of just that short clip, but I think that kind of encapsulates the general tenor of the whole State of the Agency. The good news is that, yes, there will be an in-house law enforcement agency with the chief priority of keeping Metro safe. That's the good news. The bad news is, if you're really paying attention, that it's going to take up to 5 years to implement. What is not completely clear is, and I look at this as bad news, and it seems like they're skirting the issue, the timeline is not exactly clear. They're saying it's going to take, a few years. It's going to take up to 5 years. Does that mean that it's going to take 5 years and it'll be incremental, where we'll see this roll out each subsequent year, or we're going to wait for another 4 years after the LA Olympics before we'll actually see this in-house police force?
Now, it's going to take several years.
It's going to take several years. Well, how about what's going to happen in the first year? What's going to happen in the second year? Because if we have to wait several years before we even end the contracts with LAPD, Long Beach PD, LA County Sheriff, before we have this in-house law enforcement Metro Transit Authority agency, then it's reasonable to assume that we'll deal with these same problems for the foreseeable future. And it sounds like that's what Mayor Bass is saying. Because if it weren't that, I believe that she would have just gone ahead and said, yes, starting next year, we'll have this. And a year after that, we'll have that. And you'll see this incremental growth of the presence, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. But we did not get that. And that to me would be disheartening, because that means year after year, we're going to have to depend on the goodness of people to stop criming for crime to lessen on Metro. And it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. But along those same lines, we know that Mayor Bass has now passed the proverbial baton, or in this case, the gavel, to Supervisor Janice Hahn, and it's now her charge to make sure that Metro is safe for everyone, for you, for me, for people who are tourists, who are coming to the city for World Cup, for the Olympics, just to go to work on a daily basis. This is what Supervisor Hahn had to say.
With great respect and pleasure, I pass this gavel to Chairwoman Janice Hahn.
My top priority as the new chair of the Metro Board of Directors is the safety of our riders and the safety of our employees. And law enforcement is an essential part of that puzzle. I believe the recent surge in law enforcement ordered by Mayor Bass and our board was the right thing to do. And I've heard from riders who appreciated seeing more officers on their routes.
I appreciate it as well. Yes, the law enforcement surge has helped. From what I hear, the people I've talked to, it's helped to some degree. And I'm not naive. I'm not expecting just a surge in law enforcement or even a surge in law enforcement presence on platforms or trains is going to fundamentally change the safety quotient. But we do know it starts there. We can't arrest our way out of this situation, but people or would-be assailants need to feel uncomfortable that the prospect of being arrested or being apprehended is greater than it is right now. People, these criminals, are taking advantage of the system and its inadequacies. The first thing we have to do is increase the law enforcement presence, but it can't take 5 freaking years. That's 2029. That's 2 presidential elections away. That's a World Cup away. That's 2 Olympics away. The solution can't be that far out. It's later with Mo Kelly. We'll talk about the Metrolink sexual assault, which happened today.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
From Metro to Metrolink. Now, they're not the same. Metro services Los Angeles County. Metrolink, different agency, services further out. It could go out to Ventura County, San Diego County, Orange County, what have you. But Metrolink does have an overlap with Metro. If you've ever, like for example, Comic-Con is going on. If you've ever gone to San Diego and you want to leave through from LA, you'll go down to LA Metro Center and Union Station, and you can get on the Metrolink there. There are a lot of people. In fact, our own Chris Little, news director, want to tell all his business. He would ride the Metrolink going down the Metro Center and taking Metrolink out to where he goes home. So there is a lot of overlap and crossover between Metro and Metrolink. But by and large, Metrolink has not had the same number of issues, probably because there are fewer people riding Metrolink. There are fewer access points, number of platforms, number of stops, what have you. And it's going out into what I call the hinterlands. But they still have their share of problems. In fact, I know our news director has a nickname for it. Hey, Mark, you know what he calls it?
I don't. I want to hear it.
He calls it the urine train.
Okay.
And you could probably assume why. But anyhow, there was a convicted sex offender who was accused of attacking a woman on a Metrolink train who was walking around naked. Look, I wouldn't believe it if I just heard it myself, but here's what happened.
The man was arrested in Upland around 6 Tuesday night. He was naked. Officers there didn't know he was wanted until L.A. Sheriff's deputies pulled up and said he was the one they were looking for in a sexual assault on the Metrolink train. He's now facing several charges. There was also a warrant out for him in L.A. County for a parole violation in another sexual assault case.
The name of the man is Edward Rodriguez, 32 years old. According to published reports, he boarded an eastbound train at the El Monte station. A female rider told investigators that he was shirtless and carrying a box of beer when he tried to kiss her while grabbing her arm and touching himself, then partially exposed. The alleged victim got away and exited the train at the Claremont station, where she called the police. LA County Sheriff's Department later identified Rodriguez, as you heard in that clip, and he was detained in Upland. Rodriguez was turned over to deputies and booked on several charges. Police said he also had a felony warrant out of LA County for a parole violation related to a prior sex crime involving lewd acts against a child. Again, you can't prevent all crime, but as I said before, if you are unsafe on public transportation, then I am willing to assume that you're not safe anywhere. And if you've ever ridden Metrolink before, it's a very, for me, for the most part, it's been a pleasant experience. I've taken it, used to take it every year going to Comic-Con in San Diego. Get on the Pacific Surfliner. You get down there in about 2 hours. It's a pleasant ride. It's a comfortable ride. But when you have more homeless people around, it's not impossible for people to walk on and get off. Yes, they do have someone on the trains, usually asking for tickets, checking tickets, but it's not all the time.
And it's not close optional, just so you know.
Well, evidently it is, because, you know, it wasn't the nakedness which got him in trouble on the train. It was what he did while partially naked on the train, which got him in trouble.
It is very hot out.
It is that, and I'm quite sure that had something to do with it. But I'm not going to conflate Metrolink with Metro, but there's some similarities as far as how the problems of LA County are, I'll just say, pervasive across public transportation, be it Metrolink. We heard the story of what happened, the shooting on a bus, which was not Metro not too long ago. Obviously, we have these problems with Metrolink, and I just think it's emblematic of what's going on across society in Southern California. It's not just LA County. It's to a greater degree, no doubt, in LA County. And I getting ready to go, probably at the top of the hour, I'm getting ready to go on TV with Spectrum and talk about these issues, talking about the crime and the crime stats and the LA County DA's race between Nathan Hochman and also George Gascon, and the perception of crime, how people are feeling about it. So all these things are related. I know I'm kind of busy trying to do two things at once.
Hey, you got a radio show to do. The TV people can wait.
Oh, they are waiting. That's why they're waiting to my commercial break.
I can take over. Don't worry.
You can.
I got it.
You can.
Got your back.
All right. But you got to insult me fewer times.
That's part of the show. What are you talking about? Listeners would complain if we didn't have that. They have to rely on something.
Oh, it's so funny. And we talk about taking people behind the curtain, and you remind me, Mark, how often do we get notes from listeners who want to comment just about the banter going back and forth?
It's become more often. It's fairly frequent.
It's like a thing. It's like they don't care about the show. They just want to hear who's going to insult who more often and better.
Yeah, it's become pro wrestling kayfabe, but it's fun. So,
it's Mo off the top rope with the elbow.
Yeah, if they like it, I like it.
Yeah, I can't disagree. As long as you remember that I'm winning.
You say so. Is there somebody else in the room there with you that you can see who's telling you that you're winning, Mo?
No, I'm just insecure, like you say.
Okay, that's always attractive.
See, Elmer, he's too new. He doesn't know to give you a rim shot. So
no, I want Elmer to develop his Bane voice.
No, you can't do it now. You can't do it. It's too late, Elmer. Okay, the moment's passed. And also, it would have been out of urging. It has to be organic.
Yeah, but it was terrific last night. A+, Elmer.
Yeah.
It's radio, so.
You can't put up a thumb. People can't say, see, Elmer put up his thumb like it's radio. You have a microphone in front of you.
Yeah, really, I got to tell you, Elmer, American Sign Language isn't so effective on radio.
The first rule and lesson of radio.
There you go.
The first lesson is you have to be audible. We have to hear you, or it doesn't count. Not sign language, not a head nod. You know, it's almost like you're talking to your parents. Do you understand? No. Answer me. Do you understand?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, son. It's later with Mo Kelly. KFI AM 640. We are live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app. And when we come back, we'll tell you why California is not the best place for summer road trips, at least according to a study.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
Growing up, it would be, I would say not frequently, but maybe every other year, my father would drive across country. He would take the family across country. We would go on these road trips, usually driving to my late grandmother's house, my mother's house in Detroit, Michigan. So we would drive the classic Route 66, which is now Interstate 10. We'd get to see the whole country. It was a great learning experience for me and my older sister. We got to see all of the country, the flyover states. We drove through all the flyover states, as they say. But people, I would say less frequently now, go on these road trips, even though I guess it's just much more expensive when you think about it. And Wallet Hub put together a list of the best place for summer road trips, and it got me thinking about my time growing up. And California didn't do so well, as you might imagine, because everything's much more expensive in California, including gas. So if you were to do a summer road trip and it's going to be to California, your dollar is not going to go as far. You're going to get much less bang for the buck. And they ranked all 50 states across 32 key metric factors to define a quote-unquote great summer road trip. The metrics were combined into three categories: costs, safety, and activities. Well, how does California rank? Well, 43rd. 43rd out of 50th. And no, I'm not going to do the whole top 50 or the top 10 list, but I will say, for as much as I love California, I am not naive, and I am self-aware about some of the issues going on in California and some of the barriers it would be to a road trip. But I am curious. Who do you think is at the top three? Mark, do you have a guess as far as who would be in the top 3 or 4?
I'm going to guess the Pacific Northwest is right up there.
You'd be incorrect.
Really? Well, you stumped me then.
Let me see. Excuse me, I had to sneeze there. It's not Pacific Northwest, but if you were to, it's actually what you would last believe. What do you think you would last think of?
Okay, for best road trip, that's
for best road trip?
Okay, so I've driven I-90 all the way across where all the wall drug signs are. Is that a clue?
Let me just say, all 3 states are diametrically opposed to California. Some geographically, some socially, some politically.
So what, Idaho, Montana, what else?
In a way, but no, different ones. You'll see.
You're going to have to drag me across the finish line.
Okay, I will drag you across the finish line. Coming in at number 3 as far as the best place for a summer road trip. New York.
Okay.
Yeah, but I wouldn't have thought so because I think New York is just as expensive as California in many ways.
True, yeah, but now that you say it, it makes sense. I wouldn't have thought of that. What's next?
All right, number 2. Minnesota. But why in the hell would you have a summer road trip to Minnesota? What is in Minnesota? I've been to Minnesota. All right, I've been there more than once. It's not any place I would actually want to visit, and definitely not by car.
Well, you don't get out of the car if it's Minnesota.
Yeah, I was about to say, isn't this driving through Minnesota? Like
it's
that could be
summer
nice.
road trip. I'm just yeah, but why would I want to drive through Minnesota? It's not like I want to see the countryside or something. Minnesota in the summer is very, very hot. I've been there in the summer. Do not want to go there in the winter for obvious reasons. So why would it be great for a summer road trip? I don't know.
Get to the other side.
Have you ever heard anyone in life say, "Hey, let's drive through Minnesota"?
No, actually, never once in my entire life.
Never. Not even in a movie. Never. What do you think is coming in at number 1? Any guesses, Elmer? Use your inside voice.
Massachusetts.
Okay, that's Massachusetts. That's your guess. Tawali, you have a guess for the best summer road trip according to Wallet Hub?
Best summer road trip?
Yes, state-wise.
State-wise to San Diego.
No.
Are you talking about going
State.
to someplace?
No, the state that you would like to have as part of your summer road trip.
Oh. I guess Georgia.
Okay, Georgia.
Yeah, Georgia, yeah.
I've driven through Georgia. Not much to see, or I didn't really care for it, but okay. Mark, you have a...
You've totally got me stumped. I mean, if you want to talk about scenery on a road trip, maybe something like a coastal place like Louisiana, which otherwise maybe not.
That's a good one. That's a good guess.
All right.
And I'm thinking, and the state which is number one, I have driven through, talking about my cross-country trips via Route 66, going through Amarillo, what have you. I've driven through this state, and there's really not a lot to see, especially in the summer. Coming in at number one, as far as the best place for a summer road trip, according to Wallet Hub, and let me just say I completely disagree. Everything's bigger in the state of Texas.
Well,
that's a lie.
Thank you.
I've driven through Texas. That's a lie.
I don't get it. I don't see it.
But if you stay in your car, you're not dependent on Texas's power grid. So maybe there's something to this.
I've driven through Texas in the dead heat of summer. It is horrendous. It is horrendous.
Yeah, bugs on your windows, flat land.
You don't want to stop. There's nothing to see.
Nothing.
No, rednecks making human chili, people chasing you around with chainsaws. There's nothing to recommend Texas.
Now, I don't mind if I were to fly into Dallas.
Whatever happened.
Oh, does that mean my segment's over, Elmer? You're just saying just hurry up and get out? I know we're coming to the end of the hour. I know.
We pissed off somebody from Texas.
But I can say firsthand, I've driven through Texas both ways, going east, coming back west. Yep. It's not one of those states you got to see, okay? I've driven through like Missouri, which is in Kansas. Nothing in Kansas. Missouri's a little bit more, beautiful in that regard.
There's something we're not being told, like highways where you can just open up on, something like that. I don't know.
Well, they're saying cost and safety and activities. I don't think of a lot of activities in Texas other than amusement parks in certain cities.
Sweating. That's the primary activity.
Even then, that's not it.
Yeah, they're few and far between.
That's what I'm saying. We drove through Texas on the way back to California from Erie. It was like, get us out of here. That's not cool.
Look, that's what it says, okay? You can take it for what it's worth. I'd rather drive from Lodi to San Diego in California and hit all those sites in between as opposed to going from El Paso to Houston in Texas.
Maybe they're also talking about cheap because driving.
No, it is.
Talking about driving through California is expensive.
No. They said that cost is a part of it. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying okay, so you get cheaper gas, but the sites have to matter, don't they? You're talking about a summer road trip, so you're making stops along the way. Yeah. There's sites that you want to see.
Well, maybe it's food, too. You can just shoot a cow, pull over, harvest your own steak right there.
Oh, Arizona. Beautiful.
Arizona's great.
Beautiful.
Yeah, Arizona. Hot as hell. But
the scenery.
Road trip.
Yeah. The scenery. Nice.
Do you know the song Route 66? Mark?
Absolutely. In fact, you mentioned that show. I still watch that show because it was before the mallification and TVification of America, and you could see the differences of all the regional places where those guys went in their car.
St. Louis, Missouri, Oklahoma looks mighty pretty. You'll see Amarillo, Gallup, New Mexico, Flagstaff, Arizona, don't forget Winona, Kingman, Barstow, San Bernardino. You get hip. You don't know that song?
And diarrhea.
Get your kicks on Route 66. Nothing?
That's a different song.
No.
I got the Pepto-Bismol song mixed up with the Route 66 song. Yeah, that's the Route 66 song.
KFI AM 640. We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app.
Whatever happens, we have got it covered.
KFI
and KOST HD2.
Los Angeles, Orange County.
Live.